So you are once again welcome officially into historic Cape Coast Dungeons. My name is Mark Tete. Because I was born on Friday, you can call me Kofi. There's no problem with that. And we are doing a walking experience. People call it tour. I say experience. And it is taking us about 1 hour. We are walking. And I'll begin first with a brief introduction. As you walk, you can ask questions. Comments are equally welcome. And let me say that we are going to talk about transatlantic slave trade. What happened to the African race several years ago. And the story is very, very sad and emotional. So if you are coming for the first time, psychologically, you must be strong.
Come on, wait a minute.
Now this is historic Cape Coast Dungeons, but the word Cape Coast itself, it is a corrupted Portuguese word, in the word Cabo Corso, which means short cape, and that was corrupted into Cape Coast by the British people. And this structure we are in this morning is the youngest and the last slave dungeon in Ghana. Ghana, we have 3 of these major dungeons and several of the forts along the coast that were built by Europeans. But the first one is at Elmina, which was built around 1482 by Portuguese. We have one in Accra, the capital. That was built by the Danish around 1661. This one was started by the British around 1665. So if you look at the ages, this one is the youngest among the 3. This one was built at the time Europeans started enslaving black people for 200 years already. Because this transatlantic slave trade started at the first dungeon, Elmina, but not this very one. And that was during the 1500s, when in the history of the whole world, there was this man called Christopher Columbus. He said he discovered the Americas, which is not true anyway.
Right.
So when he said so, the Spanish people moved from Europe to those places, and they established their plantations where they needed labor to work. So they tried to use the indigents, called the Native Americans, or the Red Indians, or the Cherokees to work for them. But according to the same Europeans, they said those people were not strong, and they were dying from diseases. So there was a Roman Catholic bishop. His name was Bartholomew de las Casas. He suggested to the Spanish people to look for alternative sources of labor to replace the Native Americans. What happened was that even before the start of the transatlantic slave trade, that the white men came to build these structures like this along the coast of West Africa, there was what we call the trans-Saharan trade, which the Arabs took some blacks through the Saharan desert to Europe. So some of those people were taken to Europe, especially from Spain and Lisbon, to the New World, and they tried them, and they proved to be physically strong. And the first place they were taken to was called Hispaniola, to this date, and they proved to be physically strong. So at first, they were taking Africans from Europe to the Americas to work. Well, with time, Africans in Europe got finished because there were not many. So they had to come back to the land of Africa to take the blacks to the farms. And that was the time Portuguese built the Elmina dungeons, which is not far from here. Portuguese came to Elmina in search of gold, because this country was once called Gold Coast. So gold brought the Europeans. They will tell you they came to spread Christianity. That's not the truth. So Portuguese who at Elmina trading in gold were given a legal license by the Spanish people. They called that one Asiento, to transport Africans from Elmina to the Americas. So the whole of West Africa, Portuguese started this transatlantic slave trade. They were at Elmina for 150 years, buying and selling our ancestors. The Dutch attacked them in 1637. They defeated them. So that was at Elmina for 50 years. The British also came here. When the British got here in 1664, Dutch were at Elmina, occupied this land. So British fought them, they defeated them. The same 1664 was the same year a state in North America called New York, then New Amsterdam, changed hands from Dutch to British. The same year British defeated the Dutch over here. When the British defeated the Dutch, they actually started the construction. The construction went through stages. It went through demolition, addition, demolition. It was built over 100 years using free and cheap African labor. The way they designed it, this dungeon, they kept 1,300 Africans at one time. The whole of these places was for men. 1,000 were here. As against 300. That is where we walk through today. They stayed 2 weeks minimum to about 3 months, all because of availability of British ships. But 1807, British passed a law, said they stopped this trade. 1814, Dutch also passed the same law. But from then to 1860, Africa, this trade did not stop. That alone continued for 40 years and over. So they named that one illegal. So 1860, slavery stopped finally. So they used the structure as a colonial administrative center. And the British were here to the time Ghana will gain independence on March 6th, 1957. They removed the British out of this building. So the structure, as at 2024, it is 359 years. That is the age of the youngest dungeon. Elmina, the first is about 542 years old. But it will also interest you to know that before British started the construction in 1665, this land changed hands from Portuguese, through Swedish people, through Danish, through Dutch, and to the British. They were fighting each other. When the British defeated the Dutch in 1664, they built these old dungeons, they were trading. They knew other whites were attacking. So they brought all those cannons to see around for defense. That was why they stayed here for over 200 years and nobody conquered them. And they built a structure using bricks like this. They brought these ones from England. They brought them to balance their empty ships to Africa. When they were going, these black people as balanced away. There wasn't cement. So it was built using grounded oyster shells mixed with lime powder and then palm oil. And the foundation of the building is a rock. It was built on a huge rock. That is why for years the structure is solid. So this is in a way a small introduction before we begin. On a tour, I will tell you more, including how the Africans were captured from their villages before they brought them here. And they stayed in this dungeon for months before they were taken to the Americas and Caribbean. I don't want to keep it standing for far too long. So we start at the point that we talk about that. So we are all moving